You know, we live in a time when it feels like pretty much any video game reboot or remake or sequel or whatever is possible. That being said, there's still a whole bunch of games that we really wish would come out that probably just never will. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. However, before I get into these different reasons, I'd like to point out first that a lot of these game choices for us are going to be very personal, and so they're going to vary between us. So while I'm yapping away in this video, I'd like you all to think of which games you would choose personally. I should also point out that while we say these games will never come out, that's not entirely true. We do think in the back of our minds that there's always that chance something could come back. I mean, freaking Bubsy and Shaq Fu came back in a way, and people hated those games. They were notorious, so, they kind of got brought back as a joke, but the point is, anything is possible. Okay, so the first reason why these games will never come out, these dream games that we just know will never come out, is because the company that makes them is just no longer around anymore. I mean, just look at the Thunder Force games, the old Thunder Force games. These were some shoot 'em ups that were awesome. And Technosoft, the people that make them, they're not around anymore. At least certainly not how they used to be. Also, sometimes if these companies are still around, they're just not the same as they used to be, or they just don't care about, certain franchises that used to be really popular. For example, Mega Man with Capcom. They didn't really care about Mega Man nearly as much as they used to for the longest time. And it almost wasn't until there was that whole big screw up with Mighty Number 9 that they were like, hey, we could capitalize on this and give people a proper Mega Man game. But back to my point about companies not being the same as they used to be, I think Rareware is a good example of this. I mean, even something like Killer Instinct, one of their own IPs, Microsoft didn't even trust them to make the game themselves. They handed it off to a different developer. And, Banjo-Kazooie, I mean, the fan demand for this game, for a reboot or a remake or just something, the demand couldn't be more clear, and Microsoft won't do it. And I wonder if it's because they think Rareware isn't capable of making an actual good Banjo-Kazooie game anymore. Hopefully, depending when you're watching this video, that's been corrected, and there is a another Banjo-Kazooie game, a real one, not like something like Nuts and Bolts or whatever. But yeah. That all being said, sometimes there's certain IPs that, companies just flat out don't care about anymore. For example, Konami and, a whole bunch of franchises, but Castlevania sure comes to mind. I mean, what the heck are they doing with that? There's so much potential of what they could do. Clearly it's popular. I mean, there was a freaking Netflix show for Castlevania. I mean, that sounds weird, but obviously it's popular enough to have that. And, we got Bloodstained just because they refused to do anything with the IP. But even still, there's always going to be hope with a franchise as big as Castlevania. Most of our dream games that we just have no hope for ever coming out are stuff that's just not as popular, not as well known. That being said, even something like Rocket Knight Adventures, I talk about this game all the time, and I feel like this is a game people don't really know or care about, and even this got a re-release on Xbox Live Arcade quite a few years ago. I don't like that reboot that they made, but it is something. But just something isn't enough when it comes to dream games. I mean, these are dream games after all, so the sky is the limit for as far as what we say we want. So even just a basic re-release or kind of like a cheap reboot isn't going to be good enough for a lot of us. We want them to go full on, full in, and make the best game that they could possibly make with like a good budget, a talented team, all that kind of stuff. Take a game like Ocarina of Time, for example. Now, this is considered one of the best games ever made by a lot of people, and they did this 3D version of it, years back. But, it's nice, it cleans up the game, it's a little bit better, it's appreciated, but a full-on remake of Ocarina of Time is what a lot of Zelda fans would like to see, and I just don't know if that's ever going to happen, even for a game as big as this one. The Final Fantasy VII remake obviously happened, but Nintendo's just different with this kind of stuff, so who knows? Also, sometimes certain games or IPs get brought back and the game just sucks. I mean, remember when they tried to bring Tony Hawk back? what the heck was that? And that's almost even more discouraging than if the game never came out at all, because then they look at it and they say, well, we tried and nobody liked it. And it's like, no, you just made a crappy game. You got to redo it and make an actual good game. Okay, so now it's time to talk about what game I would like to see. And what that would be a first-person shooter. I mean, when's the last time we saw a first-person shooter game? But yeah, you caught me joking. Anyways, what I would actually like to see is a retro sprite-based pixel art type of game, but with an actual like AAA budget behind it. So like just this huge effort, lots of marketing, make it this big thing. And you know, just make it like one of those really great 16-bit games with just with a huge budget, and make it like super long. And yeah, I think that would just be awesome. I think the closest we've gotten to that is maybe something like Octopath Traveler. I'd like to see more stuff like that, in even bigger budget than that game. That game had a pretty good budget, but even bigger, more full scale than that. You know, just like a big holiday release window, huge retro inspired game. That would be awesome. And maybe even have some of the people who worked on those games back during the 16-bit era who don't work on them anymore make it. That would be really awesome to me. I know we have lots of like indie games that do pixel art and stuff like that, but for me, having you know, one of these big developers do it would just be really cool to see. But anyways, that's just what I would choose. Of course, I want to hear what all of you would choose as well. I think you know, we're all going to have some very personal, different answers. I mean, maybe some of us have the same answers, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. I think there's going to be some really interesting choices that some of you have. So with that, leave your comments down below, and I will see ya in the next video.